Dear Dan, I'm writing to you today because I'm in a state of total crisis. My wife has just left me after nearly 10 years together, and my whole world has crumbled. I'm not sure where to turn. I'm about to lose my home, my adopted family, and everything I care about. I know I'm not alone. 1.1 million Americans get divorced every year, which doesn't exactly give me solace. Of course, it's not just the couples who suffer. By the time they reach adulthood, half of all children see their parents split up, like I did. When I got married, it seemed so romantic. We were so young and in love. Were we naive to get married? How was I supposed to deal with the inevitable changes that every relationship undergoes? From the passion of first love to the day-to-day demands of domestic life. Is it natural to be monogamous? To be with one person for our whole lives? Or are we at best, as you say, monogamish? I'm setting off today in search of some answers. I'm really hoping you can help.
I don't know where to start. You know, that desire, that impulse, to be so overwhelmed by love that you want to permanently somehow enshrine that momentary feeling by codifying it through marriage is evidence all by itself that you shouldn't get married, that you're not mature enough for marriage. And you have so much working against you, that you're both so young. You know, if you're gonna measure success by, are we gonna be together for the rest of our lives? Are we gonna be able to preserve forever this feeling by getting married? No, you're not.
I was completely promiscuous for the late part of the 60s and early part of the 70s. The pill had just become widely distributed, and there was a wave of feminist thought that said that women almost had the obligation to be as promiscuous as men. It was a mighty time. I felt like I had a series of the same sort of relationships that went to the same dreary end. I went back to Wyoming, and I was in this much more 19th century condition where I thought, well, I'm running a large ranch in Wyoming. This is impossible to do with, frontier housewives for a fortnight. What I really need is a wife, and if I'm going to do that, I'm going to try to be married in the conventional sense, and I'm not going to be polygamous as is my tendency. And I managed to convince somebody to come up there into this frontier state and marry me, and then impose monogamy on myself for a good long time.
When I got married, it was the most optimistic, hopeful, loving act that I've ever engaged in. I'd always before put the brakes on every relationship, always been hesitant, and I decided that I'm going for it.
Do we really understand marriage? Do we understand the social aspects of marriage?
Does each of us really want to make the other one happy?
Most Americans tend to think that the traditional marriage was the one that they see on Leave It to Beaver, as though, that might be a documentary. So they think of it as a male breadwinner family, the wife at home, doing the vacuuming, spending all of her time raising the children.
They make sure that everything is on the table in just the right place.
We have an idea that the American family, a mom, dad, 2 kids, and a picket fence suburban household, that this is the way family has always been and always should be.
It's a nuclear family of 2 people who once loved each other and may still, and who have committed themselves to exclusive sexual relations.
The world is a scary place, and we need somebody to help us feel safe and secure. That is what a spouse or somebody that we choose to commit to provides for us.
My parents never got married. Like, they spent 10 years, very wonderful years together, but it was, a very unconventional relationship. In the 1950s, my maternal grandfather, Billy, married my grandmother, Marge. They had 2 kids, my Aunt Karen and my mom, Deborah. They lived in the nuclear family model for just a few years, until my grandfather ran off to Italy, where he became a spaghetti western star. While there, he started a commune, where free love was practiced and societal structures of all kinds were rejected. When she was 15, my mom dropped out of high school and went to Italy to find her dad. They ended up getting along really well, and she stayed there. When she was just 16, she met my father, an Italian prince named Dao Ruspoli. My dad had been a well-known playboy in the 50s and 60s and was still married to Nancy, his second wife, when he met my mom. Nancy and my dad had a son, my older brother, Francesco. And Nancy and Francesco lived with Nancy's boyfriend upstairs from my mother and father. When my mom was 17, I was conceived, and they went to Thailand, where I was born in 1975. My dad was 50, and my mom was 18. There was even a newspaper headline once that said, "Here is Prince Dao Ruspoli with his wife, his son, and his lover, my mom, pregnant." Then my little brother Bartolomeo was born. Meanwhile, my grandfather Billy had 3 more children with 3 different women, Hanya, Durta, and Pat, named Casimir, Alexander, and Wendell. When I was 8, my parents separated, and my brother and I went to live in Los Angeles, where we were raised by our now single mom. We did get to spend our summers in Italy, in the family castle outside of Rome, with our dad. When he was 70, Dado married for the 3rd time and had 2 more children, my sister Meluzine and my brother Theodore.
I tell you the truth, I never went through marriage. I never went through marriage, and one of the reasons is because I had an example in my family with your father, with many, many wives, with many children, and I got extremely confused. Also, if I tell you the truth, I thought it was very much fun to see all this thing going on. And then I saw my father also marrying once, marrying twice, marrying 3 times, and blah, blah, blah. So all this thing confused me very much. When I understood that what my father had told me all, growing up, saying that marriage was sacred, that fidelity was sacred, etc., etc. And suddenly I understood that all this was a lie.
It's a complete falsehood.
In fact, this is a relatively new invention.
Our family situations have always been rather complex. It's never been just about, one man and one woman and they come together for life and so forth and so on.
We look at history through the lens of the current day. In our book, we call this process Flintstoneization.
Marriage never existed the way that we see it and the way that it developed in the last 100 years.
What made you decide to choose, being married?
I was forced, since I was very small, into the role of the caretaker and the responsible one. My brother was a little bit wild, and my mom was very young. When I met my wife, she had come to Los Angeles to pursue an acting career. We fell madly in love with each other and had this extremely passionate connection. And she was very young, and I got to provide a sense of security within, a world full of unknowns. All I remember is I said I was thinking of getting married, secretly, but I'd already done it, so I didn't know how to tell you that now.
I think it's wonderful the way you got married. You both gave yourselves so fully to this love and honored it by getting married. It was a beautiful act.
My own thinking went through quite an evolution. I was raised in the 60s, and in that time, the anthropological theory was that marriage was invented to protect women and children. That women traded sexual monogamy in return for the man going out and hunting the meat and protecting them from the saber-toothed tigers. But then in the 70s, a lot of female anthropologists came along, and they pointed out if the men were out hunting and the women were home, who was protecting the women from the saber-toothed tiger? Then you got a totally different theory of the invention of marriage, that it was invented to oppress women.
La cucina, I bambini, il lavoro, le cose, e come in questi paesi africani gli uomini non fanno altro che masticare il cat, che è una droga locale, e girare con i fucili per farsi vedere come sono belli, e non fanno niente.
In Assyria, in Mesopotamia, and through the entire ancient world, a woman's virginity, her marriage value, was really more of an economic thing than an emotional thing. A father in Assyria, if his virgin daughter was raped, the father is the one who had the remedies against the man who raped his daughter. Not because his daughter was raped, but because someone actually stole his property. His daughter wasn't worth as much after being raped. What does the court do? Can the father collect the money that he lost from the rapist's family? Yeah, he generally could, but at the same time, the best solution was often seen to force the rapist and the girl who was raped to settle down and get married. But that's really a traditional remedy for rape.
With the advent of agriculture, the concept of private property entered the cognitive lexicon of our species.
As men had multiple sexual partners, they didn't want women also to have multiple sexual partners because they wanted to know that their property was going to descend to their own child.
Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. Read that in context in the Old Testament, and what you find is it says, nor his house, nor his she-ass, nor his ox, nor his servants. In other words, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's stuff. It has nothing to do with respecting his relationship. It's about respecting his property.
Eventually, I came to the conclusion that marriage had nothing to do with the relationship between the husband and the wife and the children. It was a way of getting in-laws. In-laws were the reason for marriage. I marry my son to your daughter, and therefore we have a relationship. I owe you things, you owe me things.
When I got married, her parents took me in like a son. It was amazing. I did not expect that level of being brought into a family. I had never really known that. I felt for the first time in my life the possibility of true stability. So marriage for me wasn't just about love and commitment, but it was also integrating into this larger family unit. And I think it was a feeling that it's not just my desires that count anymore. Let's expand that sense of what and who matters.
For a lot of history, marriage was not a romantic institution.
The social conservative position on love and marriage was you don't mix those two things because love is unstable and sexual desire is unstable.
I love you, Nora. Do you love me?
In the 20th century, the idea of romantic marriage, that an individual falls in love and finds their soulmate and then marries that person, came to predominate at least our public discourse about marriage.
I think so, but I'll have to think about it.
Back in Italy, I wanted to find out from my cousin Claudia why people had gotten married in our own family, going back 1,000 years.
Most of these marriages are to consolidate power. I would say all of them. Until a generation where instead passion come in the story. These marriages of passion are leaving us, basically, selling tickets at the door to have people coming to visit the garden to try to pay the bills of the gardener and whatever. The last great marriage who was made to bring money into the family was Matarazzo, this one. He married all his girls, all organized, to aristocracy in Italy.
And did you ever ask our grandfather how he felt about this?
Well, I tell you what he felt about this. He felt that he didn't basically, I think, that he wasn't madly in love. He was a grand viveur. He loved women. And I think that our grandmother suffered a lot. I know she suffered a lot. Because my father, when he talks about her, he still cries when she was crying, waiting for the grandfather to come home.
So it wasn't very good for women, this whole situation?
No, this always happened. Always happened. All these women cried. All these women cried.
My grandfather Billy had 3 kids that are all my age. All around the same time that his daughter, my mom, was having me, he was having kids in the mid-70s. 2 of them were born almost exactly the same time from women that he met on this, that he was living with on this commune. And my uncle Wendell, who lives in Torrance, has been married 15 years. Certainly the only example in my family of somebody who has decided to go the traditional marriage monogamy route.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Having seen Billy saying, I'm never going to commit, I'm going to love who I want, how on earth do you go from that to saying, I want to be with you forever?
To me, it was about the promise. It was about standing there, making the covenant, making the promise, and being there for the children. I didn't want my kids to feel like I did.
Which is how? How did you feel?
Kind of abandoned.
Right. My first memories in life are of the rupture of my parents splitting up. And I know that that's affected me. I know it's part of why I suffered so much in the end of my marriage, because I had a total fear of abandonment.
You said something before when we first started talking about your marriage and divorce. There were no children. You didn't have any children with your wife, and that made it simpler. And it does. And I'm actually sometimes accused of being conservative, because the first question I ask somebody when they say, we've been together a certain amount of time, we're thinking about getting divorced, the first thing out of my mouth is, do you have kids? Because it does change the advice that you give. Because I don't think that adults have a right to just careen around traumatizing children. Kids have this desire for, this need for some constancy. Is marriage a response to this free love shit in the 60s? Is this sort of modern, sort of bring the gays in marriage movement? Perhaps it is. Your childhood sounds fascinating. It doesn't sound like you're wrecked by it. And it seems like you're not, you probably had a really colorful life experience. I wouldn't trade yours for mine, though. Even though my parents divorced when I was a teenager, but for the first, 15, 16 years of my life, everything stayed the same one day to the next.
As I was separating, one of the first people I turned to for advice was my neighbor, Roberta, a wise and eccentric woman who seemed to have had a lot more experiences with these things than I did.
Why did you keep leaving these men, do you think?
They were boring. They weren't the right person for me, but it wasn't a good way to leave them. I moved to California because I was married to someone I didn't really like anymore, and he came out here to pursue an acting career. He had pretty eyes, that was it. He was an alcoholic, he died at a young age. And then I was married and had a second child. Then I left him and followed some unemployed writer.
So what about marriage? Is it a doomed institution?
No. I think people want to be together with a partner and want to have kids and all that.
The first time I saw her in that cafeteria in Detroit, she was sitting at a table near the window, light was coming onto her, and and those eyes, I was just like, wow, wow.
7 years later, I got a letter to my mom's address. Hey, this is Wendell. I live in California now. Give me a call. I called him here in Torrance, and we decided that we were going to do this now. We're going to get married and have kids without having met in person in 7 years.
What's your philosophy on monogamy in general? Do you think it's something that's just an unattainable ideal, or do you think it's possible?
I don't think men are basically very monogamous.
Do you think men are less monogamous than women?
Yes, by nature. But I mean, speaking for myself alone, I must be a man.
The word nature is a very contextual thing, as if there is some natural way of making love and some unnatural way of making love.
Wild, flagrant abuses of the God-given gift of sex.
When you start to say that something is objectively natural or unnatural, you really get into trouble.
The body has a design. People who say, oh, we should overcome nature, the African queen.
Only human nature.
Nature, Mr. Allnut, is what we are put in this world to rise above.
Bullshit. You're not going to rise above nature. You're not an angel. You're an animal. You're an ape, just like everybody else. Deal with it. They say, well, you know, monogamy is natural. Look at the penguins. This film, what was it called? The March of the Penguins. Churches across the country were renting out cinemas so they could take the whole congregation in to see this film, The March of the Penguins, which was this stellar example of monogamous parents teaming up to get through the winter in celebration of monogamy. But those penguins take a new mate every season. Your typical emperor penguin has 20 or 25 sexual partners in its lifetime. And yet this is held up as an example of monogamy occurring in nature. If you're gonna do this at all, do it with the species that are most closely related to human beings. Let's talk about primates. Over 300 species of primates, many of which live in complex social groups with more than one male. How many of those species are monogamous? Goose egg, not one. Not one, unless you think we're the sole exception.
Do you have a Bible? Do you study the Bible at all?
No, I don't.
You really should. God told us to be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth.
Do you think that we have an obligation to stay in the marriage even if we're not happy in it?
If we are following God's commands, He will make it work.
I had no religious upbringing, thank God. My parents kind of did the rebelling before me. But marriage and religion have been tied closely together, and I can see why that is. In a world where everything else is commodified and replaceable, the idea of one thing that's sacred.
Religions always insert themselves into human relationships and human sexual expression, because if you can come in between people and their desires, and if you can make their desires their ticket to hell potentially without your intervention, you can control those people forever. That's why religion rushes in to regulate sexual relationships, interpersonal relationships, marital relationships, because you can control people if you seize that. Which is not to say that religion and the pageantry and the symbolism and religion can solemnize a moment, and it has a beauty, and the moment can emotionally feel very transcendent. And then if you have these dance steps, basically, that you can go through that manifest those transcendent feelings, and then tie you to this history in your family, going back generations, to be able to say that this thing that I'm doing now, my parents did, my grandparents did, my great-grandparents did, my great-great-grandparents did. I don't know what my great-grandparents were like. I do know they married, and so did I.
Ave Maria, piena di grazia, sei benedetta fra le donne, benedetto il frutto del tuo seno.
Oh my God, right. Yeah, but I tell you the truth that our saint was a rebel herself.
What year is this, more or less?
1650 or 60, I have to see it on the tree. She was obliged by her father to go to the convent because she didn't want to go. And so she lived in the convent, in luxury. She treated very badly the nuns. She didn't follow the rules.
She had many lovers, I heard, right?
Well, that of the lovers, I don't know. This, I don't know.
Is it true that she was supposed to marry somebody and then
Yes.
he came and liked the sister?
No. He didn't like anybody. In those times, there was no question of liking somebody. It was the father who decided that the boy that she loved had to go and marry her younger sister. The father probably thought that Giacinta was a little bit too wild and too much a rebel to be good for marriage, and so he decided to send her in this convent.
Marriage actually means a lot to me. I'm very old-fashioned. I'm actually 17, and I have a 1-year-old son. I've been with the father for 3 years now. A lot of people, they ask me, how can you be with someone so long? What's important to me is having somebody that's always going to be there for you and that trusts you and loves you.
Or when you see like really old couples where one is pushing the other in a wheelchair, it's like there's definitely no sex appeal, but the one person will be loyal to the other to the grave. And I think that supersedes that, oh, I have butterflies in my belly, because I'll have it sometimes, but not all the time. So if I'm just only gonna be nice on butterfly days, oh, that's gonna be bad.
If you'll humor me, I wrote letters to you that, imagining during the different stages of my marriage and divorce that I would have liked to have asked you maybe and see how you would react. Dear Dan, I've been married 5 years now, and everything is so good that I'm wondering if I should be worried. I know that sounds funny, but I wonder if being too comfortable can have a negative effect on a relationship.
At a certain point, my beloved wife, who I love to this day very much, had children, and something changed profoundly in her hormonal makeup and cultural makeup as well. And suddenly she was about as interested in sex as she was in canasta, which was a game that she didn't even play. And I'm thinking, well, you know, a little offshore drilling, what difference is it going to make? I intend to be married to my wife forever. I'm faithful in my heart, which I truly was. I felt like I could do the whole thing on a don't ask, don't tell basis and everything would be fine. But, you know, the problem is that she was then continuously trying to trick me into lies of commission, which are different from lies of omission. You can't just upfront lie to the other party and expect your relationship to survive it. Eventually, it just had this terribly erosive effect, and it ended us. I mean, there were a lot of things that ended us besides that, and not the least of which was that there was no sexuality at the core of it.
Why does good sex so often fade, even for couples who continue to love each other as much as ever? Why does good intimacy not guarantee good sex? Can we want what we already have? Why is the forbidden so erotic?
Now they're radiant with excitement and the thrill of taking matters into their own hands. When this excitement of the moment settles down, what will remain?
Being in love is like being high. I mean, you're wild and you feel it. And I think that has to transform into love. Because that state is like, you know, snorting coke. It's not a state that you can live in all the time.
I don't think I'm alone in the world in having a relationship going from being very sexual to not as sexual, because it's evolved into other things. It's become more of a companionship, and it's become more of a sense of complicity and settledness.
I'm curious in the tension between passion and aliveness and freedom on one side and security and stability on the other.
We're fed this story that we're supposed to be able to find a lifelong monogamous pairing that continues to be sexually juicy at the same time that you're each other's co-parent for children, you're running a household together, you're sharing all of your finances, you're dealing with logistics and picking up the dry cleaning together.
In one relationship, we want security, stability, dependability, all the anchoring, grounding experiences of life, and at the same time, we also want our love life to bring with it mystery and awe and the unpredictable and novelty and surprise and the unexpected and that which fuels desire.
Every new relationship that's sexual is kind of an adventure, and then the adventure goes away. Then it's just kind of where you live, and it's not an adventure anymore, it's not a surprise anymore. And how can you continue to surprise each other without feeling like you're having to pull rabbits out of a hat all the time?
People go into relationships and go into marriage with some really misguided notions about what it should and what it should not be. There's a depth of connection that you have in monogamy that you just don't have otherwise. You're happier, there's a sense of safety.
But that very sense of safety that you're talking about is the antithesis of sexuality.
I wholeheartedly disagree. We need to differentiate between sexuality and intimacy, because I think anybody can get naked and have sex and it can be pleasurable, but not everybody can reach a deep emotional place with somebody else. And that's what I believe that you can only do when you're in a committed relationship with someone else.
If love isn't eroticized, if it remains something rational and something ethical and something unchanging and eternal, then we go through life in a kind of despair. And a lot of people think of love this way, but it makes human existence, this mortal existence, a kind of waste of time. From the other side, if eros isn't spiritualized,
power-hungry, domineering,
then life becomes just this transient animal sort of existence where we're driven from one satisfaction of appetite to another.
We can stay married and not be sexually to each other who we were at the start. We have to recognize, though, that adult human beings want to feel that kind of sexual passion and that kind of desire.
We are basically asking one person today to give us two sets of fundamental human needs that spring from different sources, take us in different directions as if they are one. How you reconcile the domestic and the erotic, or your need for security with your need for passion with the same person, isn't a problem that you solve, it's a paradox that you manage.
I can't help notice that you guys are dressed the same. Is that a coincidence?
That is a coincidence.
That is kind of a coincidence, yeah.
The longer you're together, the more you look alike.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
So how'd you guys meet?
Well, we got snowed in on New Year's Eve. Ended up having to all share a big bed in the middle of the living room, and she and I stayed up talking, and by the end of the night, we were dating.
What is the meaning of marriage for you guys?
Companionship.
Companionship, stability. You have somebody to fall back on and knows going to be there when you need someone. Both of us are on our second marriage. Both of us had spouses who decided to look for the mystery and look for something else. So it makes us not think in that way, I think, because we wanted that stability in the first place. So we found it now and we're happy.
Tell me about this marriage here. What does this represent?
Allora, this marriage here is very interesting because this was Ortensia Farnese, who was the niece of the Pope, Paul III Farnese, and he gave Vignanello to his niece, Ortensia, who married this man here, who was Sforza Ercole Marescotti from Bologna, this one here. That's where our family comes into Vignanello, beginning of 1500. She was the niece of the Pope, so she was very powerful, very powerful. So she kills her husband, who, in this room, and she raises his coat of arms.
Do we know why she was so angry with him to kill him?
1 minute, 1 minute. She had other two husbands after him, and both she had them killed in the village. She didn't like this man. There was no lawyers then, luckily. You poisoned the people at those times, right? If you didn't want to get rid of them. You didn't have those stupid lawyers who suck your blood from here and nothing happens ever. I hate the lawyers. At least, ciao, a light little drink or a bang on your head or whatever, and ciao, much easier.
I'm very skeptical of the idea that there is anything hardwired in human beings. Unlike animals who have to respond in programmed ways, we can make choices, and we do make choices.
The Mosa people of mountains of southwestern China, they separate the realm of desire and domesticity. You separate family life, which is a daytime activity, from sexuality, romance, and love, which is primarily a nighttime activity. Men and women alike can invite or refuse sexual relationships with as many people as they do or don't want. Children are raised by their mothers, their grandmothers, their mothers, sisters, and brothers, and so biological paternity is irrelevant.
Among the Inuit, man and wife, by mutual consent, may allow the wife to have an affair or to sleep with a guest who's coming overnight, or even to travel with a different man. Sexual infidelity, under certain circumstances, is perfectly okay within marriage. Among the Bari of Venezuela, a woman is actually encouraged to take lovers during her pregnancy. Every man who sleeps with a woman while she is pregnant is considered to give something of his substance to the child.
Like mothers everywhere, she wants to have the smartest, funniest, strongest kid she can. She'll have sex with the funny guy and the strong guy and the guy who's a good hunter and the most intelligent guy to get the essence of all these different men into her baby. And then when the child's born, these different men will come forward and say, yes, I'm a father, yes, I'm a father. So fatherhood's a team enterprise.
But the tremendous variability of everything from social structures to personal relationships throughout history suggests to me that it's just a just-so story to pretend that any way we behave is encoded in our genes.
I think everyone's different. I think
for me, monogamy is important, though.
I'm pretty traditional, I guess. I think it's essential to a relationship.
I think monogamy is important, and commitment lets you focus on what you can build together in this relationship out of trust. And I think to make a relationship work, it has to be the most important thing in your life. And he was. But then what happens is you end up cutting off parts of my sense of adventure and curiosity about life. It's at a certain point, I had to come back to my true nature. And that was not to be married in a relationship with what felt claustrophobic, what felt like it was limiting rather than expansive.
After how many years did you start to feel this way?
About 7 years.
So she came, I was able to provide this incredible world and the sense of stability and the sense of excitement and bring her into my world. And then as she became more and more successful, I became emasculated. And I think that yeah, it was, I felt very vulnerable.
How I feel about love is I'm trying to learn at 73 to believe and feel and internalize that somebody loves me their way, not my idea of what they should be doing or my idea of what I want back.
For philosophers like Kierkegaard, love was a place where you could bring your desires into communion with your reason and have a genuine synthesis, a genuine harmony.
And then I fell in love, like they do in movies, like in Shakespeare or opera. I mean, you know, and I think it's an unusual condition, and it generally ends with everybody dead on the stage. But I had one of those experiences. I looked across a crowded room, and I knew for the first time in my life, I hadn't even seen her face yet. And, you know, she turned and looked at me and had the same deal, and we were living together a week later in spite of the fact that she was freshly married to somebody far better qualified than me. And during the time that we were together, I could see the beauty of women, appreciate it even better than usual because it was detached from any desire to own. It was like knowing that the mountains are beautiful at sunset without having the slightest desire to own the mountains. I didn't even think that this was something that existed in men. And then I put her on a plane in Los Angeles one night, 2 days before her 30th birthday, and when she got off that plane in New York, she was dead. I had never put all my eggs in one emotional basket like that before, and I was completely devastated. I then experienced voluntary monogamy and involuntary monogamy, and I decided that I was not going to try to be monogamous again unless I felt that same kind of completely voluntary sense of it.
The idea of losing all of this love, all of this family, my whole identity had gotten wrapped up in this, for better or worse. And the idea of losing that was really scary. And then when it happened, it was even worse than I expected. And I remember my mother, you know, being in a very interesting position to help me through this, because on the one hand, she saw me suffering and wanted to take care of her son that's like in this terrible position. But at the same time, I think she related very much to my wife. She helped me to understand that it wasn't about me.
If you really love someone, it's about wanting them to be a full human being, wanting them to grow, wanting them to be fulfilled, whether it's with me or not. And in your breakup, I saw that pivotal moment where you were in so much pain. Everything that validated you, everything that you had created together, the years that you spent together. But at that moment, to really question what is love? If I love this person, how do I deal with my own pain? How do I let go with love? And you were able to do that.
Your eyes that once were never weary of mine are bowed in sorrow under pendulous lids because our love is waning. And then she, although our love is waning, let us stand by the lone border of the lake once more, together in that hour of gentleness when the poor, tired child, passion, falls asleep. How far away the stars seem, and how far is our first kiss, and ah, how old my heart. Do not mourn, he said, that we are tired, for other loves await us. Hate on and love through unrepining hours. Before us lies eternity. Our souls are love and a continual farewell.
First of all, you've known me since I was a kid. You've known my mom since high school. I can understand the impulse that says, I've really gotten to know this person. I know everything they're gonna say before they say it. I'm bored. So then you say, okay, well, we've had a great run and let's part ways. And there's this great Nietzsche line, I like a life of brief habits because I get totally immersed in something and then we part ways as friends, having learned something from each other, and then we continue to grow. Do you think there's something more enriching with this like soulmate for life than somebody who has a relationship every 10 years and then has the next thing because they've really outgrown it and they just have exhausted all the possibilities of that relationship?
Yeah, if people can stay together, then the relationship can change, the dynamics change. But if you can expand and include, then it's as you get older and get more life behind you, you have a larger family, a larger tribe, a larger connectivity to society. You have more people who you care about and theoretically care about you. That's, I think, a much better model than, okay, I've done this for 10 years, I've had this experience, I've taken what I need, I'm a bigger, better person, I'm now gonna go over here and have more of my experience and become more of me. And no, most people, if you walk around the streets and look at their faces, they're fucking miserable. Miserable. Because they're living in a shallow pool of nothingness.
Where are we now? Because last time we talked, we were in the castle. What is this place?
This used to be Palazzo Ruspoli. This used to be all in the hands of your father and my father. This was a name, it was an identity, it was in a family since 1700. We gave up everything. For what? For sex.
How was this given up for sex?
Because Dado basically ran after women, not thinking about the future. Dado had 5 children from different women. My father had, all these wives, but where is the wife with the money?
I think Sigmund Freud really had it right in his book, Civilization and Its Discontents, when he was talking about the sexual urge being so powerful and the needs of society being completely contrary to the urges that people feel. The first legal collections out of Mesopotamia were consumed with questions of marriage, monogamy, adultery, sexual issues, bestiality, things like that, and was seen primarily as necessary to visit the worst kinds of punishments on those who broke sexual rules, and specifically those were adulterous women. The first death penalty statute I could find on earth was the impalement of a wife for committing adultery.
But you know why your father and my father never wanted women with money? There's a reason.
Why?
Because they always said, both of them, that women with money try to control them. And they do not want to be controlled. They always told me, my father and your father, this is a very Latin, macho way of thinking, of the insecurity of men.
The laws surrounding sex generally reflect man's terror at women. Man's terror at women's reproductive power, man's sense of helplessness in front of women, and our desire to do anything that we can do to tell ourselves that we have control over forces that we really, in life, feel like we have no control over whatsoever.
Do you think you can help us get married?
Why, I'm in favor of marriage.
The United States government has made a decision, a long-standing public policy objective, to encourage its citizens to get married. Part of this comes from lack of separation of church and state and Judeo-Christian morality, that this is the best way to organize families. People call this the marital industrial complex.
I will be your Casanova, with that you must agree.
I know you're a Casanova, but you'll have to marry me.
I think if you're ready to get married, although I wasn't ready to get married, but we did, so I don't know.
Why'd you get married?
Prom night, I was 19, she was 17, I took her to her prom. 9 months later.
9 months later.
We got married under the gun, so to speak. It's been hard.
Montana shotgun wedding. We have an economic system that's based on an idea of a male breadwinner and who's supporting a wife and children. This is a way that the government can privatize dependency and not have to take responsibility for caring for those single mothers and their children. But that form of social welfare state has completely failed. The largest group of people in poverty in America are single mothers and their children, more than mentally ill people, drug addicts, physically disabled people, and people who don't speak English combined. Going into a government office and saying, I need food, I need help to support my children so that we don't become homeless like many of the other single mother families in this country, and having the government say, why don't you get into a sexual relationship with a man who will support you, is akin to the government being a pimp to poor women in America.
Dear Dan, it's been 3 months since my separation. Now that I'm single again, I have to admit there's something exciting about the idea of starting over, of rediscovering myself through new experiences with new people. And I realize now, looking back, that attraction to the new, it's always there. I think it must be there for everyone. What did you do when you felt that pull to something new?
I always cheated. I just did what I wanted. And I think I did it when I was pissed off at somebody. I just go find somebody. Or when I wanted out and I didn't have the nerve to do it. Women have to make a story up about it. That they're in love, or they're very interesting, or this person is spiritual. You know what? You just wanted to get out and get laid and have attention. It's more about the attention and the excitement. Because, I mean, sex is sex. You know, it's like, how different it's going to be. But it's all the building up to it and the flirting and the somebody pursuing you. When you're married, that doesn't happen.
But of course, the culture tells us sex isn't that important, right? And they accuse you of being overly concerned with sex, but that's the one thing that we kind of base our monogamous relationships on, right?
The culture says sex is so unimportant that you shouldn't prioritize it in a marriage, but sex is so hugely important that you can't have it with anybody else. These forces are in conflict culturally. We tell people, you're a bad person if you think too much about sex. You're a bad person if you look at your partner and reject them because the sex isn't there. And then we look at them and say, you're a bad person for fucking somebody else.
I have that whole cliche list that girls make from romantic comedies where you're like, make your list and then he'll come and you'll find the dude. I would love to meet somebody that I don't want to cheat on. You know what I mean? And I don't even think it's hard. I didn't cheat in my 5-year relationship. Well, cheating, I feel like, comes, I'm already lying. Okay, I feel like for me, every time I've cheated, and I've cheated in a lot of relationships, but not with, well, one time with sex, most of the time with makeouts, all the time emotionally. I always break up with the person I'm with the minute I cheat. I need that to like as a hook to get me out.
I call it the shadow of the third. The shadow of the third is really, the third exists all the time, either in your head, either in fantasy between you and me, either in our memories of our past and acknowledgement that we've known other people, either in reality because we've allowed each other to be with those thirds. But the third exists all the time.
There's a guy at the gym, I call him my Latino guilty pleasure. I look at him, but I come home to my husband, you know? And Wendell laughs about it. Like, he jokes, when he's there, he's like, look, there's your dude. Yeah. It's funny. And you really don't have to have sex with just anybody who's good looking.
And what about porn?
Some people don't care, and some people are like, oh, like so many guys watch porn, and they just kind of make it like
like a mainstream thing, like, am I not enough for you? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I'd be like offended because I'd be like you have to like go to like porn and like look at images of other women. It's like, also I find it creepy. Like, I don't know, some people think it's like normal, but I just think it's creepy to like watch someone else have sex.
Some couples deny its existence and would rather, tighten the hatches and hunker down and make believe that there is no outside world. Okay. Then when they find their partner online doing porn or anything, they have a deep sense that their partner is having sex with somebody else.
You go against every other advice columnist in the world probably and say that infidelity isn't always a bad thing. Can you kind of spell out the times where you think that people have permission to cheat and when they don't?
The difficulty when you talk about when it's okay to cheat is that everyone pictures sort of an idealized newlywed couple together a couple of years, and then he or she cheats, and of course that's like the worst thing you could possibly do. And often the cheating comes later in a marriage. Like, two people can have 20, 25 years. One of them's done with sex. One of them actually does not want to have sex anymore. What is that other person supposed to do? Are they supposed to submit to having their sexual life unilaterally declared dead? Or are they supposed to divorce? What if they can't divorce? What if their partner is dependent on them for health insurance or economically dependent on them? What if they have small children? I look at that situation and go, well, there are two options there. You can leave or you can cheat. And sometimes cheating is the least worst option.
What happens in long-term relationship is that people will often create an illusion of familiarity. They really think they know the person that's next to them. In my experience, they often think they do until they find out the other one has cheated on them, and then they realize that maybe the person that lives so close to you, they may be familial, but they're not necessarily known to you.
I look at a marriage and I see a history, these two people together. I see children, I see property, I see two extended families that have knit together. I see a network of friends, neighbors, other relationships, all these people emotionally invested in this partnership. Somebody cheated. And the people who think that I put too much importance on sex say, oh, no, you must discard all of this. Divorce and the trauma of it, traumatize your children, rip your lives apart, rip these two extended families apart, force friends and relatives and neighbors to choose sides. They put so much weight on that one sexual transgression. There's a higher loyalty than just I didn't touch anybody else ever over 50 years. When non-monogamous behavior destroys a relationship, we all hear about it. When non-monogamy saves a marriage, it never gets the credit.
Very few of us these days expect to live our whole lives having sex with only one person.
We've generalized this idea that the only healthy relationship is one man and one woman, and the fact is, most of those don't even work out.
Who are you really with? That little blonde secretary from the office?
Because the mistake I think we made in like the 50s and 40s and 60s was instead of giving women the same freedom that men had always enjoyed, we imposed on men the same limitations and restrictions that women had always endured.
Divorce rate's over 50%, and the amount of affairs is even larger, and most police calls are for domestic violence. You know, we're not very good at two people getting along, period.
And yet, despite the massive rates of dissatisfaction, lack of female orgasm, and infidelity in relationships, we're still fed this story that that's the way it's supposed to be, and if it's not working for you, there's something wrong with you.
We talk about intimacy. People talk a lot about intimacy, but they have intimacy with their friends. They have intimacy with relatives. They have intimacy with other people. But this sex thing, it seems almost like this superstitious aura around it, that thing. You can't have that thing with everyone else. Everything else you do in a relationship, you can do with anyone else, but somehow this sex thing you can't have with anybody else.
You get a million letters in an advice column, and it's amazing how often the same like sentences pop up in a million different letters from a million different couples. But I would take a bullet for him. I would walk through fire for her. I can't forgive. It's like, how is forgiving harder than getting shot?
Right.
But that seems to be people's hang-up.
If one of you were to slip up and be with someone else, would that be grounds for ending your marriage?
Probably.
Yeah.
His suitcase and crap would be in the front yard.
I'd never talk to him again.
Oh yeah, for sure. Straight up, just like that. Even if I was in love with them,
How can you respect yourself if you're gonna get back to someone who cheats on you?
I was in Cambodia shooting music videos for a Cambodian hip hop band. And she comes over to me and puts her hand on me. You gotta meet my daughter.
I didn't want to have anything to do with it. And then I sat down next to this incredibly good-looking, cool guy, and that was it.
We fell in love.
We were together for 5 years before we got married. It felt very safe and nurturing and different than what I had had growing up. I was definitely attracted to the fact that he'd grown up in a family where the parents had been together basically their whole lives.
Had a picture-perfect childhood with a lot of stability and a lot of routine, which is something that having kids now is a big priority for us.
We were the first of our friends to get married. We were really young, and we were also the first of our friends to have kids.
A lot of folks around us, friends, were still just sort of wild and crazy as we were settling into this.
Having kids is incredibly tiring and intense and overwhelming, but we work so well as a team that it was actually incredibly attractive to see him become a father. That rebonded us again.
And I think what's interesting too about any long-term relationship is that you sort of fall in and out of love with each other.
We have and had such a close bond, and I felt so incredibly loved by him. It was never a question of whether we were going to be monogamous or not. It just sort of was our life, and we were such a pair.
Non-monogamous people say, because I care about you so much, I want you to have other experiences like that with other people. Never would I want to deprive you of that. I want you to be able to have other experiences that are meaningful of that sort with other people, and it makes me happy to be able to give this to you. It's a very different relationship.
Polyamory is the idea that you can be in more than one loving relationship. It's a different model than monogamy.
It is a model in which you actually say one can love more than one person at the same time, and one can construct a system that can incorporate those multiple loves.
Most married gay men, after they've been together for 5 years or so, are in either an action or an open verbal agreement, an open sexual relationship. This is to say that they reserve the emotional sympathy for each other, but they're having casual sex with other people. They realize that our biological compulsion to have sex with other people doesn't go away the minute you put a marriage ring on.
A friend of ours came to stay with us, and he told us that he and his wife had an open marriage. And we're like, what? No one we knew had ever talked about that or been in a relationship like that. It kind of sparked this thing between us where we thought, why not? Let's see what happens. We had had 9 years of monogamy without even considering not having it. Sandy was brave enough to allow me to kind of start a relationship with this other person. And that was the beginning of our exploration. That was 3 years ago.
The lessons of polyamory that are applicable to people who are monogamous as well is the idea that your partner does not need to be everything for you and that you can take responsibility for getting your needs met. So for instance, I don't like to do adventure sports. They make me feel like I'm going to die. My partner can go and do that with somebody else. I like to go to dorky policy conferences all day long. My partner doesn't want to do that, and that's fine.
I have been on quite a journey from utter shame to utter celebration of my sexuality. I'm the daughter of a fundamentalist conservative Christian minister, and I was hardcore Jesus girl until I was about 22. Vonnegut said, every argument in a marriage boils down to, you're not enough people for me. We thought we invented polyamory, absolutely. I'm thrilled to have since read all the literature and met many wonderful people, but at the time, it felt really scary because of how much we cared about each other.
Been with Terry for almost 20 years, and we've been together through thick and thin, and we've raised a kid together. But because we're publicly not monogamous, I get letters every fucking day from people saying, you don't really love each other, you're not really committed. They will say, every relationship I've ever been in has been monogamous. And I will write them back and say, how many relationships are you talking about? And they will say, oh, you know, I'm 35 and I've had 5 committed monogamous relationships that you've ended. For newness, for novelty, for new love, you've had to discard these people one at a time. I have never discarded Terry, he's never discarded me. And we are less committed than you with the 5 exes.
Yeah, so you're pro-commitment. That's what's
pro-commitment.
And all of the other benefits that come from what otherwise people think is only possible in a monogamous relationship.
Sexual exclusivity is the enemy of commitment.
Polyamory is already socially acceptable. We don't call it polyamory, we call it divorce. So John marries Susan, and they have 2 kids together, and then they divorce, and John still has a relationship with Susan and the kids because, you know, John has to be in the kid's life, and John goes off and marries Samantha. My brother, for example, has been divorced 4 times, right? Does that mean that he's failed to love all his previous wives? No. So we already accept the fact that it's quite possible to love more than one human being at a time. Anybody who tells you otherwise probably shouldn't have more than just one child.
With kids, you open your heart in a way where you understand that you can love multiple people fully and at the same time.
I personally am a polyamorous woman and a queer woman. I've had a long-term male partner whom I live with and long-term female partner. I've never been unfaithful and I don't want to be. And so I've sought out a relationship in which we can both have the freedom with full honesty and checking in with each other to have relationships with other people.
My wife's French. You edit this carefully. We were married in 1976. We have a lot of similar interests and more importantly, points of view on the world. We're best friends. For sure, we're soulmates. I'm polyamorous.
I knew that conventional marriage didn't feel right for me, and so I've decided that I want to be out in order to give other people an image of possibility.
For me, polyamory, or being polyamorous, means that I can be in love with more than one person at the same time.
I found it incredibly attractive that he was so brave and willing to let me do that. All our friends were like, you guys are nuts. This is gonna ruin your relationship. You're gonna completely, drift away from each other. And we found the opposite to be true. We found that because we kind of went into it with pretty radical honesty, we had so much more faith in each other, and it rebonded us and made us more attracted to each other. It's hot.
It was me and my first girlfriend. One of the things we started talking about, you're attracted to this person, why shouldn't we make out with them? I mean, what will that do? You and I are secure, we know we're not gonna leave each other. It was amazing to have that experience of a new person, but also have the comfort of I have this long-term relationship.
Most relationships, there's a place where each individual says, hey, I need my time to grow, and then I can come back and give more. This feels like an iteration or a version of that.
The point is to have more love in your life and to have deeper connections.
No matter what happens or where we go or whatever direction, we always seem to come back to each other and reconnect and share our experiences.
If all of a sudden polyamory was widely accepted, what would that do for the way we think of property at large? What would that do for the way we think of who we have duties to and who we're responsible to? Instead of 2 fundamentally different experiences, the one I have with my partner and then the way I feel about strangers in the street, they start to blend and bleed together more. You don't put all of your compassion and passion and generosity into one person.
I mean, I also think it definitely takes a certain personality type. This is not for everybody.
As part of our research, we went to a free love commune in Portugal. I can see why you're rolling your eyes
Love ain't
and already
free.
saying...
Sex isn't free. There's costs, there's consequences. There's other people's lives in the balance.
Well, their attitude was like, we can provide stability as a group and as a community for the kids, which is more than this kind of rupture that happens when the divorce happens.
I agree with that. It takes a village. I agree with Hillary. The nuclear family isolated by itself in a ranch house in the suburbs, without elders around, without other community members involved very intimately in the lives of the children, that is an aberration.
We are here in the most remarkable project called the Peace Research Center of Tamera.
This is the place, the edge place of actually finding the ways of the heart, the ways of connection between human beings. It's really about finding ways to reopen our hardened hearts.
You were saying last night that some of the other women were offering their partners to you?
Yes.
What was that like?
My eyes nearly fell out my head. Because it's so countercultural.
How did they do it? What did they say?
I was talking about a real terror of being back in a relationship after being single and celibate for a while. And one of the women said, My lover is so gorgeous and so tender, and if it would really help you go, you have my blessing. If he can help you in your healing process, I would love that.
Women want to express their sexual nature as much as men do, particularly if they're allowed to bloom and if the whole sort of overlay of patriarchal stickers, you know, slut and so forth, if you show your desires. And you are allowed to really express your wish for sexuality, intimacy, love, and so forth, then you start to bloom. Most women never bloom in our society.
It takes so much work and so much processing, and every time someone new comes into your life, you have to navigate all the personalities and issues that come up.
Is it harder to be left by two women than to be left by one?
Totally. I had totally committed love and, you know, beautiful erotic relationships with two amazing people. Then when it went wrong, I had double the heartbreak. And for some reason, I never imagined that. I always thought, you know, what's one cool thing about this setup is if someone left me, there would be another person there and that would ease my heartbreak a little bit. I never imagined that they would both leave at the same time. Yeah, and they're still together.
The sociologist 100 years ago, Georg Simmel, pointed out that there's these inherent differences between a group of two and a group of three or more. In a group of two, you can't have secrets, because if we come out in the morning and the milk is spilled and there's only two of us, we both know who did it. Either you did it or I did it, and I know if I didn't do it, that you did it, or I know that I did it. In a group of three, you can never know. You can know that you didn't do it, but you can't know who of the other two did it. With a group of three or more, you get politics. You can get two ganging up against one. You can get one who tries to divide and conquer the other two.
My little brother is polyamorous, and he's trying really, really hard to make it work because he believes in it. But I've noticed that all it's ever really brought him is pain. It's like communism. It's a great idea, but good luck making it work.
I think this is a real, major, and probably unresolvable conflict in people's minds. I believe that human beings have the capacity for monogamy or polygamy. I think that we have impulses in both directions, and that we'll do a lot better if we recognize that we have both impulses and that we're going to be conflicted about it, and that we need to talk about it honestly, and that not everybody's going to resolve the problem in the same way. I don't think there's one right answer to this. Some couples are going to find that monogamy is so important to them as a value that they're going to have to work hard on ways to wall off their sexual relationship from the sexual temptations around them.
Monogamy and marriage have been thought of in lots of different ways, and it hasn't always involved love, and it hasn't always involved the set of obligations and relationships that it does right now. But we also have to remember that it's an ideal, and ideals are often very hard to achieve.
We can do better than this. But here I am, you know, I'm 64 years old, having spent a long life trying to figure out better ways to do it, and I'm still, you know, I can't say I know a great deal more than I did when I was 18.
Having grown so much out from the experience, I ask myself, like, was it, maybe it was for the best, right? Do you ever tell people, like, that's it, maybe you should split up now?
I won't tell people, no, you know what, you just need to throw in the towel. I'm still a firm believer in monogamy. The notion of monogamy is no longer this archaic idea where it has to mean kind of sexual deprivation and monotony. I think it can be a very vibrant kind of institution or construct that provides some stability for people to grow.
We have reached, I think, a world historic paradox that we expect more of the marriage relationship than ever before in history, but we no longer think that marriage is such a vital institution that everybody has to enter it. So when a marriage works today, I think that it's arguably more fulfilling, sexually, emotionally, more fair, definitely more fair, more passionate than ever before in history. But there are also more alternatives to marriage, And when a marriage doesn't live up to those ideals, it seems less bearable to people.
If people think getting married is the only way they can fall in love and have relationships, that's a sad prospect, because then what they get told when the relationship comes to an end is that they made a terrible mistake and they must have been terribly stupid, right? How could they have been so dumb? This wasn't the real one. This wasn't true love. This wasn't the one and only. Well, we'll have to try for the next one and only.
We wish that everybody had the ideal marriage, and we hope that it could be an absolutely pervasive phenomenon, but it might be beyond the capacity of many people to achieve that. That doesn't undermine it as an ideal.
If your spiritual, ethical value in life is located in your monogamous marriage, then good for you. My parents have been married 52 years. And as far as I know, they've been pretty damn happy every one of those years, and monogamous. And Mom and Dad, if you see this, I don't want to hear about it if you weren't, you know?
We've been married over 50 years.
When I saw her, she just seemed to be the ideal. I learned later she wasn't, but...
I am his like no one else is. I'm not embarrassed by it at all. He's mine also.
We've grown so much together over so many years.
I just cannot imagine being with anyone else.
Is monogamy in marriage something that you would recommend that people should try and preserve?
I would say love should be preserved. Whether that means getting married, I never knew that we had a choice.
I can't imagine.
I mean, yeah, what would life be
other...
like without her? I mean, it would be meaningless. My whole life has been with this woman, and it's been great. So I don't have any regrets.
Dear Dan, it's been 4 years since my divorce. I've learned so much during the making of this film, thanks in part to you and all the other people I talked to. Of course, there aren't any easy answers to these questions I've been asking, are there? On the contrary, it seems that the deeper I dig, the more complicated it all gets. One thing is certain, though. Love is universal, but it's a delicate process. It requires constant nurturing through communication and honesty. My hope is that we've helped people have conversations that they might not otherwise have had, and maybe think, without shame, about the relationship model that could work best for them. The other conclusion I've come to is that change is constant, in ourselves, in our relationships, and in the culture at large. I started with an ending, so now it seems appropriate to end with a beginning. An uncertain one, a risky one, an exciting one, and one that would have been impossible without having gone on this journey with you. Will it work? Who knows? What counts as working anyway? That seems to change all the time too. I'll let you know the next time we talk. Thanks again. Yours, Tao.